Trust in God? In the heart of a quiet town, there lived a young woman named Emily. She faced many challenges. Her job was unstable, her relationships were strained, and she often felt weighed down by the uncertainty of life. Every day, she wrestled with the heavy burden of worry. It seemed like nothing ever went the way she hoped, and the future appeared dark and unclear. One evening, as Emily sat alone in her room, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders, she remembered something her grandmother had once told her. When life feels heavy, trust in God. It was simple, but the words resonated deeply in her heart. With a sigh, Emily whispered to herself, God, I don't know what to do anymore. I feel lost and hopeless. As soon as the words left her mouth, a deep sense of peace washed over her. It was as if something beyond her understanding was wrapping her in comfort, telling her that everything would be okay. She closed her eyes, imagining herself letting go of all the fears and anxieties that had been holding her captive. In that moment, she felt something shift inside her. It was as if the weight on her shoulders had been lifted, and she realized that she didn't have to carry it alone anymore. I trust you, God, she whispered softly. From that night onward, Emily chose to trust. She knew the road ahead might still be challenging, but she felt a sense of peace knowing that she wasn't alone. Each morning, she woke up with renewed strength, putting her faith in God's guidance. She no longer let fear dictate her actions, and slowly, things began to change. Emily's life didn't magically transform overnight, but the constant worry she had once carried was replaced with hope. She trusted that God was leading her toward a better future. The struggles weren't gone, but with faith, she faced them with courage, knowing that her trust in God would guide her through any storm. Keep your heart strong. Sarah had always been a woman of faith. She believed in God's power and His guidance, but recently, life had been difficult. The loss of her job, the struggles in her marriage, and the pressure of raising her two young children alone had taken a toll on her spirit. Each day felt like a battle, and sometimes the weight of it all made her wonder if she was strong enough to keep going. One afternoon, as she sat by the window, watching the rain fall softly outside, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of fear. The uncertainty of her future consumed her thoughts, and the challenges ahead seemed impossible to overcome. She put her hands together and whispered, God, I don't know how much more I can handle. Please give me the strength to face what's coming. Just as she spoke those words, she felt a gentle warmth fill her heart, and a voice within her reminded her, do not fear the challenges ahead. I will always be with you. Keep your heart strong. It was as if the message came from deep within, echoing with the reassurance she so desperately needed. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a sense of peace, like a heavy burden had been lifted. The voice spoke again. Focus on what matters most: your family, your faith, and the love you have to give. Let go of the worries, and trust that I will never abandon you. Sarah took a deep breath and looked at her children, who were playing in the next room. In that moment, she realized that her strength didn't come from external circumstances, but from within. It came from her faith, her love for her family, and her trust in God. The next day, Sarah woke up with a new sense of determination. She no longer felt consumed by the weight of her challenges. Instead, she focused on the things that mattered most: her family, her spirituality, and sharing love with those around her. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she no longer feared it. God was with her, and with His guidance, she was strong enough to face whatever came her way. Her heart was no longer burdened by fear. Instead, it was filled with hope. And as the days went by, Sarah found herself walking in faith, knowing that as long as she held on to God's promises, she would always find the strength to keep going. Walking in faith, Sarah had always been a woman who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Life had tested her in ways she never imagined, but she had always pushed forward, relying on her strength to get through. However, as the days turned into months, she began to feel the pressure, and her spirit started to wear thin. Her job was uncertain, her relationships strained, and her dreams felt like they were slipping further away. One evening, as Sarah sat alone in the quiet of her home, a deep sense of exhaustion took over her. She had been struggling with worry and doubt for so long, and the constant fear of what might happen next consumed her. Her mind raced with thoughts of the future, and she could feel her strength beginning to falter. In that moment, Sarah closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. God, I don't know how much longer I can keep going. Please give me the strength to face what lies ahead. As if in response, a soft calmness filled her heart, and she felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over her. It wasn't a voice she heard, but something deeper in understanding that everything she feared was not as great as her faith. She knew she wasn't alone. With renewed clarity, Sarah began to see that her life didn't have to be defined by fear and uncertainty. Instead, it was filled with hope. The weight she had been carrying seemed a little lighter, and she realized that she no longer needed to worry about what the future held. And as the days went by, Sarah found herself walking in faith. Each morning, she woke up with a new sense of purpose and direction, knowing that God's promises were her guiding light. Even when challenges arose, she no longer felt paralyzed by fear. She walked forward, confident that as long as she held on to God's promises, she would always find the strength to keep going. The obstacles she once feared no longer held the same power over her. With each step, Sarah grew stronger, rooted in the belief that she was not alone in her journey. She began to see the beauty in her struggles, recognizing them as opportunities to grow and trust even more deeply in God's plan. Her heart was no longer burdened with doubt or despair. Instead, it was filled with hope that no matter what came her way, she would have the strength to overcome it. And with faith as her foundation, Sarah knew that every challenge she faced was just another chance to witness the power of God's promises in her life. Strong faith. James had always believed in the power of faith. His grandmother had taught him that as long as he held on to his faith, nothing was impossible. But lately, life had been challenging, and his faith had been tested in ways he never expected. His job was unstable, his relationship with his family was strained, and the uncertainty of the future filled him with anxiety. One evening, as James sat in his room, looking out the window at the dark sky, he felt overwhelmed. The weight of his worries seemed too much to bear, and he felt lost, unsure of where to turn next. He remembered his grandmother's words, "Keep your faith, James. Keep praying and find peace in God. With faith, all things are possible." With a heavy heart, James whispered a prayer. "God, I feel like I'm losing my way. Please help me. Give me strength to keep going." For a moment, nothing changed. The storm of his thoughts continued, but deep within, he felt a shift. It was subtle, like a quiet whisper in his heart that told him everything would be okay. The peace he had been searching for was not in the world around him, but within himself, through his faith. The next morning, James woke up with a renewed sense of hope. He knew the road ahead would still be difficult, but he also knew that his faith would guide him. He took time to pray, asking for strength and guidance. As he prayed, he felt his heart lighten, the heaviness of his worries slowly lifting. He began to trust in God's plan for him, even when things seemed uncertain. He realized that the key to finding peace was not in avoiding challenges, but in believing that with faith, he could face anything. All things are possible with faith. He remembered his grandmother's words. Each day, James continued to pray and hold on to his faith. The more he trusted, the more he felt a sense of calm that he hadn't experienced in a long time. The challenges of life were still there, but his faith gave him the strength to face them head on. He knew that no matter what came his way, he could overcome it with God by his side. James found peace in his faith. He understood now that faith wasn't just about believing when things were good, but trusting even in the difficult times. With each prayer, his faith grew stronger, and he began to see that everything was possible with faith. Renewal and blessing. Mark had lived much of his life feeling trapped by his own habits. Despite his best efforts, he found himself stuck in patterns that only led to frustration and regret. His days were filled with doubt, guilt, and an overwhelming sense of being unworthy of anything better. He had tried to change before, but each time the temptation to return to his old ways was too strong, and he felt defeated. One evening, as he sat alone in his room, Mark prayed for the first time in what felt like years. "God, I'm lost. I don't know how to change or where to begin. Please help me. I want to be different." As the words left his mouth, he felt a deep stillness settle over him, as if something greater was listening. A sense of peace began to fill his heart, and in that moment, Mark knew he wasn't alone. The next morning, he woke up with a sense of clarity he had never experienced before. It was as if God had given him the strength to see beyond his old habits. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and a deep desire to change his life. Mark knew it wouldn't be easy, but he felt empowered to take the first steps toward transformation. He understood that with God's help, he could overcome the temptations that had held him back for so long. Mark began to make small changes in his daily routine. He replaced old habits with healthier choices, choosing to pray and reflect on God's word every day. Each time he was tempted to fall back into his old ways, he remembered the peace and strength God had given him. With every prayer, he felt more grounded and connected to something greater than himself. Over time, Mark began to notice a change in his life. New opportunities started to open up, and his outlook on life shifted. He felt more at peace and began to experience the blessings he had once thought were impossible. The doors that had once seemed closed were now wide open, bringing prosperity, joy, and a renewed sense of hope. Mark's life had been transformed. He had found the strength to overcome his temptations, and his habits had been changed by God's grace. He was no longer weighed down by guilt or regret. Instead, he felt free, knowing that God had opened new doors for him, leading him to a life filled with peace and abundance. Now, each day, Mark woke up with gratitude in his heart, knowing that the transformation he had experienced was just the beginning. God had renewed his spirit and blessed him with the strength to continue growing. He understood now that with faith, no challenge was too great, and no door was too close to open. Strong faith. Anna had always been a woman of deep faith. She was taught from a young age to trust in God, no matter what the world threw at her. However, as the years passed, the weight of life's struggles began to dim her belief. Her job became overwhelming. Her relationships seemed fragile, and the constant stress left her wondering if God was still listening. At times, it felt as if she was drifting away from the very faith that had once sustained her. One quiet evening, as Anna sat alone, feeling the burden of uncertainty, she turned her eyes to the sky and whispered, "God, I feel so lost. I don't know how much longer I can keep going. Please show me the way." Her heart was heavy with doubts, but she knew she needed to turn to him, even if she wasn't sure where to start. Suddenly, she felt a calmness wash over her, as if something gentle and powerful was embracing her from within. It wasn't an audible voice, but an undeniable sense of peace filled her spirit. It was as if God was telling her, "Don't be afraid, my child. Keep your faith in me. Trust and believe. All things are possible with faith." The words resonated deeply within her, lifting the veil of doubt that had clouded her mind. For the first time in a long while, Anna felt a shift in her heart. She understood that faith wasn't just about asking for things to be easy, but about trusting that God would provide the strength she needed to face whatever came her way. The next day, Anna began to make a conscious decision to pray more, to reconnect with God. She set aside moments throughout her day to speak to him, to seek guidance and peace. Each prayer felt like a small step back toward the faith she had lost. As the days passed, Anna found herself growing stronger in her belief. Her fears replaced with the calm assurance that everything would be okay because God was with her. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she now believed with all her heart that with faith, she could overcome anything. The burden she once carried so heavily had lightened, and Anna understood that peace was found not in the absence of struggles, but in trusting God through them. Her faith had been renewed, and she knew that with prayer, all things were possible. Anna continued her journey with a heart full of hope, knowing that each day brought her closer to the promise that faith in God could transform every aspect of her life. Confidence in future blessings. Jessica had always dreamed of a life filled with purpose and success. From a young age, she envisioned herself doing something meaningful, something that would make a difference in the world. But as the years went on, life seemed to throw obstacles in her path. The challenges seemed endless, and with each setback, her confidence began to waver. There were times when she thought about giving up, when her dreams felt out of reach, and the future seemed uncertain. One quiet evening, as Jessica sat in her room, staring at the vision board she had created years ago, she felt a wave of discouragement. Her dreams still felt far away, and doubts crept into her mind. "God, I've worked so hard, but it feels like I'm going nowhere. Please, show me the way," she whispered, feeling the weight of her fears and uncertainties. Just as she spoke, a deep sense of calm filled her heart, and she heard a gentle whisper in her soul. "Do not be afraid, my child. Continue to follow your faith. Pursue your dreams, and I will help you achieve them. I will bring prosperity into your life." The words were simple, but they carried a powerful message. Jessica felt a spark of hope ignite within her. For the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of her doubts begin to lift. She realized that the journey to her dreams wasn't going to be easy, but it was possible, and God would be with her every step of the way. The next day, Jessica woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She set her intentions and made a commitment to trust in God's guidance. She continued to work hard, pushing through the challenges with confidence and determination. Each small step forward brought her closer to the vision she had for her life. The next day, Jessica woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She set her intentions and made a commitment to trust in God's guidance. She continued to work hard, pushing through the challenges with confidence and determination. Each small step forward brought her closer to the vision she had for her life. As the days passed, Jessica began to see signs of progress. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach began to open up, and doors she had thought were closed were now wide open. With each new opportunity, she felt more confident in her ability to achieve her goals. The road ahead was still challenging, but with faith, Jessica knew that she could overcome anything. She understood now that success was not just about achieving her goals, but about trusting God's timing and His plan for her life. Her dreams were becoming a reality, and she felt a sense of peace, knowing that with God's help, prosperity and blessings would continue to flow into her life. Jessica's confidence grew as she walked forward, knowing that God was guiding her every step of the way. She continued to pursue her dreams with unwavering faith, knowing that no matter the challenges, she was destined for greatness. With each passing day, Jessica realized that with God, anything was possible. Recovery and healing. Emily had been struggling with anxiety for years. It started as a small feeling of unease, but over time, it grew into something much bigger. Her thoughts were often clouded with worry, and she found herself feeling overwhelmed by the smallest things. Despite trying countless methods to find peace, nothing seemed to help. She felt trapped in her own mind, unsure of how to escape the constant storm of anxiety that weighed on her. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Emily sat alone in her living room. The weight of her struggles felt unbearable, and she couldn't help but wonder if she would ever feel truly at peace. As she sat there, tears welling up in her eyes, she whispered, "God, I don't know how much longer I can carry this. Please help me find peace. Heal my mind, my heart, and my soul." In that moment, a deep, comforting presence filled the room. It wasn't loud or overpowering, but it was gentle and warm, like a soft embrace. A sense of calm began to settle over Emily, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. The voice inside her heart whispered, "Asterisk, I am here, my child. Trust in my healing. Let go of your pain and open your heart to receive peace." Asterisk. The words filled Emily with a deep sense of relief. She realized that healing wasn't something she had to fight for alone. It was a gift from God, waiting to be received. As the days went by, Emily began to focus more on surrendering her fears and anxieties to God. She made time each day to pray and to simply rest in His presence, trusting that He would bring the peace she so desperately needed. Slowly but surely, Emily began to feel a shift within herself. Her anxiety didn't disappear overnight, but she started to notice moments of calm that she hadn't experienced in years. The thoughts that once consumed her no longer had the same power over her. She was beginning to heal, piece by piece. Each day, Emily opened her heart a little more to God's healing touch. She trusted that He was working in her life, and with each passing day, she felt stronger. She knew that her journey to recovery wouldn't be easy, but she no longer felt alone. God's presence was with her, guiding her through the storm. Over time, Emily found herself experiencing a peace that transcended her circumstances. Her anxiety became more manageable, and her heart was lighter. She understood now that God had been with her all along, and His healing power had restored her in ways she never imagined. She had learned to trust in His timing and to open her heart to receive His peace, knowing that with faith, she could overcome anything. Confidence in the future? Lena had always believed in the power of faith, but the recent years had shaken her confidence. Life had thrown one obstacle after another in her path. A job she loved suddenly ended. Her relationships with those closest to her became strained, and the dreams she had worked so hard to build now seemed distant and unreachable. The future that once felt bright now appeared uncertain, and Lena found herself questioning whether she could truly overcome the difficulties in her life. One evening, sitting alone in the quiet of her room, Lena couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The weight of her struggle seemed heavier than ever, and she whispered a prayer. "God, I don't know where I'm going. The road ahead seems so unclear, and I'm scared. Please help me find my way." Her heart was heavy, and she felt lost in the sea of doubt. As she finished praying, a profound sense of peace enveloped her. It was as though God's presence was gently reminding her that she was not alone. The still, reassuring voice within her heart spoke, "Do not fear, my child. I am with you. Trust in me, and I will lead you to a future filled with hope and peace. Live with strong faith, for I am always with you." Lena felt a sense of comfort like never before. The fear that had clouded her mind began to lift, and she understood that the future she had been worried about wasn't as uncertain as she had thought. God was with her, guiding her steps, and his plan for her life was filled with possibilities, even if she couldn't see them clearly yet. The next morning, Lena woke up with a new sense of hope. She began to live each day with the understanding that God was leading her, even through the challenges. Instead of focusing on the obstacles, she chose to focus on the promise that God would guide her path. She knew the journey might not always be easy, but she trusted that God's presence would never leave her. With each passing day, Lena found herself growing stronger in her faith. She trusted that no matter what the future held, God would be with her, guiding her toward peace and fulfillment. Slowly, the future that once seemed uncertain began to look more promising. She felt a renewed sense of confidence, knowing that as long as she continued to trust in God, he would lead her to the life he had planned for her. Lena understood now that the key to facing her future was not in fearing the unknown, but in trusting that God was walking with her every step of the way. With strong faith, she faced each new day with the assurance that she was not alone. The future was no longer a source of anxiety, but a journey of hope and peace, guided by God's loving hand, promise of salvation and blessing. Samuel had always tried to live a good life, but no matter how hard he worked, it seemed that obstacles were always in his way. His job was unstable, his relationships strained, and his dreams felt like they were slipping further away. He often found himself questioning whether he was truly walking the right path or if he had somehow lost his way. One evening, as Samuel sat on his porch, looking at the stars, a deep sense of frustration took hold of him. He had tried everything he could think of, yet the weight of his struggles felt unbearable. He whispered, "God, I don't know what to do anymore. Please help me. I feel lost and abandoned." As he finished his prayer, a quiet calm swept over him, and in that moment, he heard a soft, reassuring voice in his heart. Asterisk. "My child, I will never abandon you. I promise you deliverance, blessings, and prosperity. Trust in my plan for you, for I am with you always." Asterisk. The words filled Samuel with a deep sense of peace. He realized that even though he couldn't see the way forward, God's promises were true, and he would never leave him. Samuel understood that his struggles were not the end of his story, but part of a greater journey, one that would lead to deliverance and blessings if he trusted in God's plan. The next day, Samuel woke up with renewed faith. He no longer focused on his fears or doubts, but instead chose to trust in God's promise. As the days passed, he noticed small changes in his life opportunities began to open up, and a sense